So getting started this evening, we will begin with the mayor's report. So I will turn it over to Mayor Seth Fleetwood.
Just like that. Welcome, council. Welcome, public. I think, as perhaps was mentioned right before I got on, we're fortunate to have Congressman Rick Larsen with us tonight. I just spoke to Congressman Larsen on the phone, and we have agreed that I will give the mayor's report and give an update on some things, and then hand it over to Congressman Larsen. To start with, I know I gave an update today at 11 a.m. at the beginning of our morning committee meetings on the status of things as it relates to events that are now well known in our community on Friday. I'll do that. For an overview of events, and again, for the repeat to council, I apologize. But I was urged to give a summary again because it's the city council meeting the evening. Of course, what happened, as I said, it's well known to the community. I condemn the behavior that was exhibited. There was a lot of really awful, deplorable behavior. There were crimes committed, a variety. There were a couple of really heinous crimes that were committed. Those are being investigated. I think people know that this was in response to steps that were being taken to end the encampment. It's been going on for 2.5 months. We had posted a notice last Tuesday simply asking that people move 25 feet away from the City Hall building, and to create a safety boundary around City Hall. There were increasingly dangerous conditions that were escalating. There were folks that put out a call out to the community to, by those who were opposed to this action, to protest, to come out and convey their opposition. Clearly, a lot of people came out. There were those that were well-meaning who were present, and there were those who were clearly showing up with the very clear intention of provocation and confrontation. And obviously, all of this created a dangerous dynamic. The news went kind of viral, as people know, I suspect. Little old Bellingham was on the map. We didn't ask for it, but it certainly happened. I want to clarify a couple of things. Again, there was, in my opinion, some sensationalizing of what happened. Yes, there were people who stormed the front door of City Hall and were pounding on the windows. They broke down the door to City Hall. I was with some staff members and our police chief, Flo Simon, in the mayor's boardroom when this happened, and it was alarming. We were advised to leave, and we did so. It was characterized, I think, because of what happened in Washington, D.C. on January 6th as similar to that. One could draw a parallel here or there, but nothing so dramatic. So over that weekend, I got lots of calls from lots of media, and including CNN and Fox, and it just got out of hand. I didn't respond to calls, and I didn't want to pour any more gasoline on that fire, so I'm hoping that it calms down. There were questions asked as to whether or not there was a police presence, and we don't discuss operational details of certain kinds for some obvious reasons, it seems to me, but there were many eyes in the public safety realm on the ground and monitoring events. Of course, later that evening, there was the fight that we've seen in the the newspaper, also well known in our community, involving the hatchet. Deplorable acts. They're being actively investigated. Yeah. So it's unfortunate. It's being investigated, and thank goodness they're alive. As I said, investigation's underway. We made the decision in light of the fact that the camp is coming to an end, and in light of the actions that happened, to close City Hall, close the library for the remainder of this week. We think that's the appropriate thing to do in the name of health and safety. I think people know the context, but for the sake of Congressman Larson, who's with us tonight, I'll just, there was an encampment that was begun on the lawns of City Hall, which is managed by our Parks Department. There's a Bellingham Municipal Code that clearly states that it's illegal to camp overnight on the lawn of City Hall. It was not a permitted encampment, but it happened. It was characterized by the promoters as a protest. We, from very early on, acknowledged that we need to increase shelter options. We took a lot of good faith steps to do work in that regard, in building increased capacity. As people know, we've got base camp. We were able to stand up Swift Haven. We continue to work in parallel track as this encampment comes to a close, to continue the challenging work of building increased capacity. And I want people to know that when the encampment is over, we're not going to stop working towards that end. And I'll touch a wee bit more on that in a moment, but it's becoming abundantly clear that it needs to end. I announced 3 weeks ago that it was going to come to an end in the month of January. The health department supports this action. Our fire marshal supports this action. A number of our jurisdictional partners support this action. And in the name of public health and safety for the public who engages at these public services, for the staff who deliver these essential services, for the campers themselves, for all concerned, it's coming to an end. So I'll just wrap it up. I think contextually people recognize that this is something that's happening in cities all over the country. This isn't unique to Bellingham. There's protests around inequity happening worldwide. In fact, there were protests happening in Portland this weekend, protests in Seattle. There are a lot of well-meaning people who are observing that there are deplorable social conditions relating to profound inequities that need to get resolved. And I know in Bellingham, our values are such that we are committed to doing that work. But having said that, there's also behaviors that have to be squarely indicted, and we're doing that as well. So I'll leave it at that. I've gone over the work that we're doing to build increased capacity before. It's well known to you, Council, and we seek a peaceful end to the encampment. As we've said, if there is confrontation, we are not the aggressors. So with that, I probably missed some things, but so be it. You can ask me questions later if you want.
Mayor Fleetwood, do you have anything further this evening?
No, thank you.
No, okay. And so we will turn to public comment at this time. And just a reminder to members of the public who are wishing to speak this evening, we have 3 minutes for public comment. Deputy Clerk Elizabeth Oakes is going to give you a 15-second warning at 2 minutes and 45 seconds, just to give you a notice to wrap things up. And then she will call time at 3 minutes, and at 3 minutes and 5 seconds, the line will go mute, and we'll go to the next speaker for the evening. So with that, Deputy Clerk Elizabeth Oakes, you want to start with the first name? That would be great.
First name is Joe Carpenter.
Yes, can you hear me, please?
We can. Go ahead, Joe. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Joe Carpenter, and I live in the Samish neighborhood, and I've lived in the Bellingham since 1996. I began cleaning up the graffiti on the side of City Hall on Saturday afternoon after watching a replay of your January 11th video. It came off the marble lower skirt of the bottom of the building rather easy, but the sandstone is much more difficult, but it does come off. After seeing the graffiti for the first time Saturday morning, I noticed additional graffiti today when I went back to clean again. I expect the same tomorrow. New graffiti. Just like there are more tents and more people every day too. I'm not going to stop until it's off, and then I'm moving on to the garbage and unoccupied tents in a clockwork motion around the building. I'm going to continue to do this for at least a couple hours a day until you help me. If you want to do this with me but are afraid, you can come do it with me. I won't let anything happen to you. If it does, it'll happen to me too. There will always be the strong to protect the weak from those who will try and hurt, steal, rape, or kill them. My phone number is 360-201-5797. I'm keeping my receipts for supplies and garbage drop-off, and I'm going to submit them for the reimbursement to this city. You, me, and the majority of the community must have absolute and unflappable intolerance for this at City Hall and for everywhere else too. Zero tolerance. Get generators, huge lights, and get all hands on deck to begin this process. The mayor or one of his legal alternates must be on site at all times to supervise the rest of this team. City council members must also be on shifts until this is done. These elected officials back each other up and their employees because me and the rest of the community are backing you up. We are backing you up. This work is 24/7 shift work. The shift work will spread people and resources out. We start at City Hall and we spread out from there. Every city employee in Public Works and the Parks Department and any other necessary department ought to be involved with this. All police officers, fire department, city attorney, prosecutor, etc. If you don't think we have the laws to do this, then make the laws to do it or find those to interpret them. Not every city has a problem like this. The people here do not want to follow the laws of this city, and some of them don't want to follow any laws at all. If they cannot be relocated to both of the places that the city has vacancy, they should be arrested, charged, convicted, and punished. If anyone who works for the city can't or won't do their job, whether they are elected, appointed, or rank and file employees, they should resign, quit, or be fired. If you need more help, ask for it.
Thank you, Joe. Next speaker, please.
Jory Mitchell. Jory Mitchell.
Hi, I prepared something to say before this meeting, but I just wanted to start with some replies to what Mayor Fleetwood had said earlier in the meeting. When you say one could draw a parallel, I just want to point out that there's a direct quote from a news source where you drew that parallel between Friday and the storming of the Capitol building in DC. And you've also been ignoring deplorable acts by white supremacists who regularly torment and threaten campers and volunteers, including on Friday and every day since. And I want to know, what about the health and safety of campers? And in what ways is the encampment coming to a close other than you deciding that you're ready to stop pretending to be an ally and violently sweep? Because any sweep is a violent sweep. You know who doesn't support this action? People on the City Hall lawn. And you are the aggressors and you are the oppressors if you sweep, because sweeps kill. And now for my prepared comment. On January 11th, you said our council is fully dedicated to a commitment to making a better and more equitable world. Fast forward to today, January 25th, you are depriving our houseless neighbors of basic hygiene services by directing sanitary services to not remove trash or empty the porta potties at City Hall and threatening City Hall campers with a sweep. This is directly making the world, Bellingham specifically, less equitable to a group of people who are already struggling for an inch towards equity in the city and the society. I am firmly against this action you have taken against the camp at City Hall. When I was at City Hall on Friday, I was flipped off by old white people, yelled at and threatened by white people from their vehicles as they passed by. And all the while I watched as volunteers and campers carried on, caring for each other, providing meals, resources, friendship for each other, and they were providing community care, something nonprofits are inherently incapable of doing due to their structure. I saw parents bringing their kids by, explaining that all humans deserve housing first, people having conversations about solutions, something you've not done. Instead, you flee through the back door with your overpaid cops, and instead you made the choice to exaggerate the supposed threat of a sit-in in a public space, which right-wing media outlets ate up and further endangered us. You are making a choice to perpetuate the violence houseless individuals face every day. And y'all are making David Duke proud. I suggest you listen to why people at City Hall don't feel safe using services like Base Camp. I suggest you listen to why we need a no-barrier, non-hierarchical option for housing. I'm asking that you not sweep vulnerable people from the lawn of City Hall and that you reinstate the sanitary services as a start. Time and time again, you've shown us citizens that you're only here to make landlords rich and white people comfortable. I think you have a lot of work to do to prove that you are as progressive and anti-racist as you think you are. Even then, you'd still have much more work to do, so I suggest you get started right now. I yield my time.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Emma Morrison.
Hi there. Can you all hear me?
We can. Go ahead, Emma.
Awesome. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak. I also wanted to say that I echo all of the remarks by Jory Mitchell. I would like to say just a couple responses to Mayor Fleetwood and just also kind of talk about my experience on Friday. So on Friday, I came to camp. I saw the request for help. My time there was wonderful. I got to interact with a lot of the residents at the encampment. I spent time picking up garbage. It was actually pretty clean. It was organized. I'd like to say that if you were wanting to have residents and in the encampment move 25 feet in response to dangerous conditions, that would actually be creating additional dangerous conditions, and that the CDC has recommended that sweeps be suspended because you would be forcing people to move camps either closer together or to leave the encampment space. The majority of the people there were people like me, young people and passionate, powerful young people. I have been a resident of Bellingham, Washington since 2000. I am only 22. I do go to Western Washington University. I love this city. I am proud to be a resident for most of my life. I am no longer proud. I would like to hear some more transparency about the heinous crimes that you have talked about being committed. And I'd also like to emphasize that there needs to be no barrier housing. The base camp is not an adequate space for houseless people to be just told to go to as an option from the encampment. There is limited space at the base camp and not enough space for all of the people at Camp210. There needs to be no barrier housing. There are people who have been kicked out and are not able to return to base camp. What are those individuals supposed to do? There are people who have had traumatic or disrespectful experiences with staff at base camp, which is a religious organization, and I don't think that's talked about enough. Religion can be wonderful and beautiful, and I'm inspired by those people having faith to try and create housing options for people. But if someone isn't Christian and they feel uncomfortable being forced to pray, that's a little weird to me. I'd like to acknowledge what action has been done to create this no barrier housing. And I'm sorry, I'm pretty fired up. I just am very concerned and worried that if there is not adequate shelter created, that people will freeze. People will die. You will have death on your hands. And I just want to address that. I think that in big groups, people tend to get very passionate and inspired by each other. And maybe I do think that some of the actions on Friday were intense, but I appreciate your time and I yield the rest of mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Next speaker, please.
Wesley Swanson.
Can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead, Wesley.
Thank you very much. I've lived in Bellingham not that long, about 2 years now, and it's a nice little community, and I appreciate the beauty that it offers. But I would like to say that it's gone downhill substantially in the last 2 years with these demonstrations and unlawful behavior. At some point, we have to teach our young people that, yes, human lives matter and that we need to house these people. We have to, and I understand that. But at the same time, what's this teaching my children? Other than the fact that they don't have to obey the law. They don't have to obey basic basic laws in Bellingham. You can't sit around and refuse to move, all the while having Antifa flags out there, tearing down the American flag. Again, that's their First Amendment right. They can burn it, whatever they want to do. But we've succumbed to leftism and radical leftism, and it's really concerning. Bellingham is now a laughingstock. It's like having Jenny Durkin ×2 here. Sorry, Mr. Fleetwood. I don't have much respect for you at this point, but hopefully you do the right thing and we can move forward as a good, strong community, and law-abiding citizens can do the business that we need to do at City Hall.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead, Chris.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Oh, you can. Okay.
We can.
Cool. Thank you.
Go ahead, Chris.
Seth, there seems to be a disparity of information regarding how the door was opened, whether it was pried open or opened by an employee, and then people simply walked in. Either way, they left shortly later when asked to leave. You compared the people walking into the door to the insurrection in D.C. You directly said that. That is a shameful comparison to make that disgraces a long history of protests in our country. Even in your opening comments, you claimed that the media had sensationalized the story, then backpedaled and drew that comparison again. Direct resources to these houseless people. Protect the people who are being threatened by white supremacists. People need help. Why are you not leading these protests, Seth? And Rick, regarding the, Rick Larson, haven't talked to you in a while, but regarding the vaccination in school districts, the vaccines are not approved for children. As important as it is for to protect our faculty and staff working with children, how are you preparing for uniform guidance to school districts to protect young children from infecting each other? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Next speaker, please.
Lindy McDonnell.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Lindy. Go ahead.
So a few previous speakers have commented that we need no barrier options for shelters in Bellingham. As far as my understanding goes, a no barrier shelter means that drugs and alcohol are allowed inside and that all personal belongings are also allowed, which includes weapons. Most of these homeless or houseless or campers, or however we choose to describe them. Oh, by the way, I might be considered an old white woman. I'm Caucasian and 65. I apologize for that up front. But most of these campers, it is a well-known fact, carry weapons to protect their belongings that they carry around with them. So it is no surprise that there was the hatchet incident Friday night at 11 that has been covered by media. Also, another thing that has not been addressed is the American flag that was ripped down on Friday. Fortunately, some freedom-loving people that I know went down, bought a new flag, and raised it back again over City Hall. That was pretty awesome. A question for the council and the mayor. What will you do to instill confidence in the citizens of Bellingham? I'm sure you realize by all the social media comments that you've seen and all the phone calls and emails that you've received that the majority of taxpayers in this city want to be able to use this public space. They want to see laws being obeyed. We are responsible, hardworking, tax-paying people. We obey the laws, and that's what we believe the expectation is for those around us. Allowing illegal camping on public property is not something that we are in favor of. We are in a COVID situation where we're all being asked to be extra cautious about washing our hands, but the filth in this area is beyond description. It's going to require complete renovation and excavation of all the public grounds around City Hall and the library. And many of us find this extremely unacceptable. We anxiously await to see what the actions of our current leadership are going to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindy. Next speaker, please.
Sandy Ward.
Yes, good evening. Sandy Ward, Bellingham, Whatcom County Tourism, Mayor and City Council members. As you know, the tourism and hospitality industry has been devastated by COVID-19. Our hotels, our restaurants, retailers, attractions, even our airport are all hanging on by a thread. And we need help, and not just financial help. As you mentioned, the activity that's been going on at City Hall is well known in the community. Well, it is also well known in the world, and the world is watching, literally. Potential visitors, meeting planners, corporations and businesses who are looking to relocate are watching events unfold at City Hall. What is not helpful as we work to restore confidence in the traveling public as we move towards recovery are stories aired in local, national, and international media in markets that we have literally spent hundreds of thousands of dollars cultivating over the years. And since Friday, and I know you say that things may have been blown out of proportion, but I will tell you that perception is reality. January 25th, the Daily Mail in the UK. Mayor is rushed out of City Hall in Washington State after protesters stormed the building. US News and World Report. Protesters break into City Hall over homeless encampment. Fox News. Washington City's mayor rushed to safety. The Oregonian. Washington protesters break into City Hall. Lewiston Tribune. Protesters break into City Hall. Cairo 7. Protesters break into City Hall. And the icing on the cake was the UK, The Sun. Shocking moment, far-left mob rips down American flag before storming City Hall in Washington State. On behalf of our tourism and hospitality stakeholders, I want to thank you in advance for helping us protect our tourism brand, reputation, and image by finding a solution and taking action this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. Next speaker, please.
Caitlin Holmes.
Hello. My name is Katie Holmes, and I take an interest in the homeless community. As a mental health worker who has had the privilege of serving many homeless individuals like those on the lawn, I do not support the violence that has sadly occurred over the last week at City Hall. However, I do think that stopping sanitation services and outhouse services to the lawn is ultimately a disservice to Whatcom County citizens in general. In addition to the individuals camped on the City Hall lawn, there are many more dispersed in tents throughout our community. It is the job of our local government to provide an accessible and equitable solution. Until we have a solution for more housing for shelter options in our community, it is inhumane to stop serving those on the lawn. Until we have a solution, we are merely asking those who struggle to do so in hiding. It is inhumane and unacceptable. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Katie. Next speaker, please.
Michelle Gay.
Yes, are you able to hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Okay, great. I just wanted to address the comments earlier. It was a lot about perception, and if we are worried about perception, then maybe we can prioritize housing folks so we're not in this situation at all. But I'd like to start off by saying, hi, my name is Michelle. I'm a resident of the Lettered Streets neighborhood, and I pass by Camp 210 regularly, as many of us do. I'm a city planner, and I understand that like many situations, this one has deep context, nuance, and paradox. After this summer, many residents have committed themselves to equity and deeply care about envisioning another world. And I'm not going to spend this time reiterating the demands of the camp volunteers who know more about this situation than I do. However, I intend to make my time about the assertion about striving for a, quote, better and more equitable and more sustainable world, as the mayor had stated in his January 11th comments. To that I say, we cannot state we are moving toward equity and sustainability without uncomfortably evaluating the parts of our places we call home that are deeply inequitable. Not providing housing services to people who have nowhere else to go is deeply harmful, and it does not align with the goals stated by our mayor or even who we are as a community. Housing is not just about equity, it's also about sustainability. And as many items cannot be reused because they are not protected by permanent housing structures, it leaves the 210 community who is unhoused in an environmental inequity as well. They are our neighbors, and if we believe in equity, then as public servants, we also believe that housing is a right and that they are deserving of that right so they can be part of the community that we are also fortunate to be a part of here in Bellingham. With Camp 210, we are faced with a possibility to squarely look at what is making us uncomfortable as residents. And many of us are pleading that you act with equity in your hearts and in your actions by offering no barrier shelters for everyone on the lawn, so no lawn sweep before doing so. Reaching equity is meant to be uncomfortable. If it wasn't uncomfortable, we would have already achieved it. So to those who are stating comments about perception, I hope we can look at what is causing the misperception and discomfort first. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Next speaker, please.
Marcus D.
Hi, it's Marcus. Do you hear me okay? Hello, do you hear me okay? Okay, great.
Marcus, go ahead.
Great. I know that there's a lot of impassioned stuff going on out there, and I'm just going to try to. I'm going to ask us all to please refocus on what the main problem is, and that is that these people are going to need some shelters before they die, wherever they are, whether they get chased back into the woods or whether they die right there on the lawn at City Hall for political reasons. I'm deeply disturbed by all of the activities that have happened in the last week over this, in the last several days. I think that it was inappropriate and arbitrary to be trying to establish a 25-foot zone around the building there. I think it's really a massive health hazard to have shut off porta potty cleanup. You have to excuse me, please. I'm a little bit addled because I'm on pain meds because of a hip replacement surgery recently. So guys, please, can we all do this together? Now we need to get the shelters that are necessary. Let's help the county to shoulder the load of getting the tiny homes that we're going to need. I'm still thinking it's going to need to be somewhere around 75. You're going to need to put 75 more online and have a big enough site with promise for expansion. You need to also be versatile enough to understand that there's more people who may need to also not die, and so we need to get them in one location into small villages where we can parse them out in a sensible way and help sort them out according to the services that they need. This is not rocket science. This is something that should have been done by government. I share many of the views that I've heard tonight from both sides. I'm tired of this too. Nobody wants to see these people living in tents. Tents are not viable shelter, and we all know that. Nobody wants to see them in their doorways of Holly Street again either. We really must move forward now. The inevitable has already happened. It's inevitable that more problems will occur because of the absolute desperation that we see on the ground right now. This is beyond unconscionable. We have no participation from government in the actual boots on the ground helping out there on any level, and only further restrictions being handed down to these people. I do not associate with any of the violence or any of the groups. Actually, I don't associate with the government as a government person, other than I've been appointed the homeless advocate for Whatcom County on the Homeless Strategies Work Group. My role is advisory, and I have been there every step of the way, and I intend to stay every step of the way to try to calmly get us to the point where we can shelter these people and save their lives, and then we can work on getting services to them together. A great, cogent plan has been put forward by myself. Others have put up a lot of paralleling plans. You're just not engaging them. I share the views, like I say, along with many other people. This thing needs to get clean, but not because it needs to be clean, because people need to survive.
Thank you, Marcus. Next speaker, please.
Red Rumble.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Cool. Since you are all not aware, especially Seth, of the extent of your power at radicalizing white supremacists, I encourage you, Seth, particularly to actually finish the book you told everybody about, because white fragility was all that was displayed the day of the protest. Let me enlighten you all on how you managed to mobilize fascism and white supremacy onto your own constituents while playing victim the whole time and claiming those individuals are anything like the racist Capitol protesters recently, when it is you that is a racist nationalist. Since you, Seth Fleetwood, decided to talk to Fox News, right-wing media, and sensationalize a simple sit-in, you have successfully managed to radicalize white supremacists within all the systems of governance. Here's a more upfront example on this. After you said your piece, Seth, we have had white supremacists attack camp, racists brandishing guns and yelling racial slurs at the houseless community living in City Hall. You spoke of civility, but you have none, because you have the cops watching these folks constantly, but you don't call the cops on the white supremacists. No, you call because people burned the flag and staged a sit-in at City Hall. The hatcheted individual is on Facebook, displaying his beliefs clearly, and they are one of the white supremacists who have come to camp to antagonize and brandish weapons. It's all public knowledge. Unsurprising to no one, you, a white nationalist, sympathize with the white nationalists. You must be so proud of yourself having held 96 meetings about the same issue, housing and racism, but never coming up with any tangible solutions. Things that we are doing, which is community building from the ground up. And that there is no entity for that. Since you prioritize civility over nobility, all the help we ever needed from corrupt nonprofits like Base Camp and Homes Now are dropping off, just like your conviction for Black and Indigenous liberation. A more systemic example would be, since you spoke to right-wing media, Homes Now has made public posts and publicly tagged known white supremacists onto them. They have made posts about how homeless people are criminals and drug addicts and publicly disrespect the people they supposedly serve. You facilitated them in exposing their corruption. Isn't that amazing what you did, dude? Isn't that great? Didn't homeless advocates warn you about the inherent biases that nonprofits hold against the people that they serve? Why is it that a nonprofit is condemning and contributing to the vilification of houseless communities when their whole message is to house people with little to no barriers? Why are they aligned with white supremacists? Maybe because the system is white supremacist, Sethy. Since you spoke, Seth, Base Camp has denied services to houseless individuals, including one in particular right now going through chemotherapy, just because they passed through City Hall to get food and blankets. Why is it that another nonprofit is denying people access to their services if they can't so much as go through other groups to get food or blankets? Didn't we tell you that nonprofits inherently compete against each other? You cannot tell an oppressor that they are oppressing you. But Seth, I'm going to continue saying that you are done with. You are nothing but perpetuating, participating, and contributing to your time.
Thank you, Red. Next speaker, please.
Catherine Orlowski.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Catherine.
All right. So I've been down at, the camp since the first week as a homeless advocate, interviewing these people, their needs, surveying it. Been doing that for, 2 months. Haven't been there most recently. And I was instructed by Opportunity Council, instructed by Base Camp how to do this, how to get these people back in, because apparently there's a path, there's resources available. I personally was yelled at base camp, and I know many other volunteers have been as well. I finally met with Bill, and he was very nice. He gave me instructions. I said, just, try to help these people. And we followed instructions, and I still can't get any calls back. We're supposed to call in to find their pathway. There's red flags, yellow flags, all this fancy stuff on paper. And it's just simply not true. They're not letting people back in, certain people. And there is no resources available for them. We've been at this for, at least 2 months. Can you imagine living in your home and you leave your home for anything and all your stuff is gone? We're just trying to save lives out here, and I'm tired of the fallacies. I'm also particularly tired of I don't know all, but a lot of these nonprofits hanging, housing over their heads get them to cooperate so that they can push their ideals on people. Housing should not be held over anyone's head. It's everyone's right to have food, clothing, and shelter. The perceptions on the city council meeting blows my mind, because literally everyone deserves food, clothing, and shelter. And I can't seem to see why we just keep talking about it and can't get anything done, these fancy dances. Yes, council, you guys work hard. I can't imagine doing your job and the fancy dance you have to do to appease everybody. But these are human beings that fell through the crack that we're talking about. And these services are not there for them. I've been on the ground working at this with a number of volunteers, and base camp is lying. Opportunity Council, where are they? They've barely been there. They've got all these resources, but people cannot have access to stuff when they can't leave their homes. It's everybody's right to have food, clothing, and shelter. So I appreciate we live in Bellingham, where, we're trying to listen to everyone, trying to build community, trying to work together. But man, with the perceptions we deal, the stereotypes, these are literally people's lives. I appreciate everyone. And I remember hearing something on one of the meetings where we keep good work intact, but there's a lot of fishy business going on. And if you were to come down and volunteer, you'd find out for yourself. And unless you're down there for your own eyes, you won't know it. There's so many lies being spread.
Time.
Thank you, Catherine. Next speaker, please.
Anya Rick.
Hello, thank you for this time. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Anya.
Thank you. My family has lived on this unceded Coast Salish land for 4 generations. I am a young professional from WWU's Human Services program, where I learned the foundational wisdom which prepares social workers for their careers. What you see is systemic, everything. We are all connected, and to take care of others is to take care of ourselves. To neglect each other is to neglect ourselves. Catherine is right. There are not enough services available. Our city, and most of America, it seems, has been sold the myth that an individual is completely responsible for their lot in life. It takes a village, and if anything, COVID had laid our interconnectedness bare. We adapt now, or we let people die. This myth distracts us from systems, bureaucracies, and budgets that do not serve to sustain our collective, only those that the system is designed to serve. Instead, the system chooses to leave hundreds unsheltered for months during a pandemic, now without access to clean bathrooms, porta potties, trash, and sewage and clean drinking water. These items, shelter, water, sewage, are environmental and humanitarian priorities. Therefore, the city has regressed Bellingham's public safety by denying Camp210 their basic human rights. Common decency and progress towards city goals has been lost. It is a city goal to steward our environment and our watershed, and by refusing to invest in basic services such as housing and relying on overwhelmed, underprepared nonprofits, the city has neglected its systemic responsibility to the people and the earth. You serve all constituents regardless of property ownership, address or no address. The city has put our neighbors at increased risk and, therefore, systemically, the frontline workers, nurses, and volunteers at increased risk of illness during during this global pandemic, as sewage and waste are COVID-19 contagion hazards, let alone toxic to the watershed and wildlife, which is also our responsibility to care for. It is the city's responsibility to take accountability for the ineptitude at preparedness planning for housing first works and saves money, reduces waste, and saves lives in the long run. You, the city, our elected officials, have the duty and the privilege to create true public safety by addressing the root cause of Camp210 and provide the services needed for public health and safety.
15 seconds.
Our housing first works. And Representative Inslee, if there's not enough vaccine, we need to focus on different systemic solutions, including a housing first model and basic human rights for all, no matter what their criminal status or addiction status is, as addiction is caused by some disconnection or trauma in a systemic way.
Thank you, Anya. Next speaker, please.
Julie Kohut.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to echo all the points of my constituents on their experience and their mental health standpoint. I am a senior at Western Washington University and Fairhaven College, double majoring in urban planning and sustainable development with a Fairhaven concentration in food security. This is my work. I have just started immersing myself in Camp210 on Friday after I was alerted from about the sweep. I'm also a journalist working for the school. I'm in a unique position, as are you. Journalists are not trusted, and neither is the government in your perpetual state. According to the Whatcom County Coalition to End Homelessness in 2020 annual report, there's 707 homeless people, 103 are under 18, 29% of youth have been self-reported mental health disability, 38% of the youth identify as LGBTQ, and American Indian/Alaska Natives comprise 2.7% of the population, but are 8% in the counted homeless population. To prevent these numbers from climbing, we should acknowledge that proximity breeds care and distance breeds fear. A quote by YouTuber Emmanuel Akau on the segments of Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. He was talking to white police officers. By creating more proximity from the camp, you are breeding fear. These people do not have basic human rights, and society is fearful of that. We need to change that. The negligence of the homelessness is negligence of the health of the city. When I ask my father to park at Glass Beach, a place I'm fond of, he says he doesn't want to because he doesn't want to look at the homeless people. To me, the cold-hearted lack of empathy seething from his mouth not only makes me realize his character, but his toxic privilege. How are you keeping aware of your privilege? You are sweeping the problem away, just like putting dust under a rug. Please don't perpetuate the problem. Instead, change the system. So what can we do as people who are in Camp210 and helping out as advocates? Peaceful protest was in order, but the values of each political group was different. The people who stormed the halls of City Hall had the incident of the hatchet, which do not represent the whole population of homeless individuals. Sleeping outside in the streets, homeless people are jumped by American citizens. I know this because I've had numerous friends sleeping outside. Yes, there was a hatchet incident, but I would like to remind the audience that the government does what it can, but people need sources of personal protection. I'd like to remind the audience, I've only been to the camp once. Take that what you will, but I know that despite religion, politics, and race, I instantly noticed an abundance of love and passion to motivate each other to fix this issue. From understanding one another, as you're doing with this meeting, there's vital moments to create a sense of respect and love. I'd like to conclude that homeless people are a vital life of complex web of city life, and we need to work together, trust the collective, and allocate money. Charitable governmental will help prevent the growing issue of homelessness. We need to sweep barrier housing, not dispersed housing.
Thank you, Julia. Next speaker, please.
Jesse Thurston.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Cool. I'm a volunteer at Camp210. I'm born and raised in Bellingham, Washington. There are about 75 to 100 people at City Hall, with many others gathering in the daytime for food, drink, and resources. I understand that what happened last Friday is unsettling for our community, especially in the wake of what occurred in Washington, D.C., but I was there working at the food tent, providing coffee, cocoa, and hot food, as well as helping people find tents, supplies, and alternative options, including base camp, housing first, etc. Yes, people were angry. A combination of community members, campers, and volunteers were present. Approximately 100 people showed up in addition to campers and volunteers to support the camp. About 20 people, when seeing Seth Fleetwood looking out the window of his office, made demands for him to come out and speak to the community. It was loud and abrasive. I can understand being scared in that situation. The door was rattled and pulled on, and at some point, I don't know how, the door became open. Nothing was broken. The building was occupied for 20 minutes, with most people sitting calmly in a circle. No one sat at the mayor's desk or tore down statues, and everyone left peacefully as asked. In normal times, City Hall is open to the public at 11 a.m. on a Friday, and is a common space for the community to gather and express their needs. There was graffiti done outside, which I was not personally happy about, and that's just me as a person, and want to support getting cleaned up. Campers also expressed their distress with the graffiti. However, Camp210 is an autonomous space. The people that occupied, which I consider much closer to a sit-in than a storm, decided to do that for themselves and not necessarily for the larger group. On Saturday morning, a teenage volunteer came down with support from their parents and fellow volunteers to organize a pancake breakfast on a sunny day. We spoke with our neighbors, both housed and houseless, and while they expressed anxiety about the potential imminent sweep, they also spoke about anger and frustration for the lack of respect for human rights regarding the housing crisis. I personally request the City of Bellingham and Whatcom County to provide us with 75 homes with low to no barrier access in a site with power, water, and basic resources like restrooms and waste disposal. I also request immediate resources for restrooms and waste disposal at Camp210. 25 houses has been offered. That is not enough. In addition, basic needs like garbage and restrooms have been stripped from us. This sickens me. There are a variety of reasons why houseless people are not able to access other services that have been offered. We have volunteers and energy to support this vision.
Thank you, Jesse. Next speaker, please.
Ebony Campbell.
Go ahead, Ebony. Go ahead, Ebony, you're unmuted. Next speaker, please, Ms. Oakes.
Tristan Blackwell.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
You are using what occurred January 22nd as a scapegoat to push for violent sweeps and give yourself an excuse as to why it's okay not to provide housing and allows many to suffer/die this winter. Your sweeps just push our houseless neighbors out of view into the woods so you don't have to watch the conditions you have created. So you don't have to be uncomfortable. Where do they go? Barrier housing has proved to not work, and this is the true safety issue during these weather and pandemic conditions. When I first moved here in 2018, the first thing I noticed was our houseless neighbors suffering and dying. Tourists, children, people see it whether it's on City Hall or not. You are a coward politician, proving to constituents you are exactly what you said you wouldn't be. Lastly, I just want to say that I think it's dehumanizing to say the houseless can't sit in a public building made to allow citizens to express their needs on a Friday at 11 a.m. when the building is usually unlocked. Sit-ins are an important part of any movement, and what better place to do it than the building made for public comment? Yes, because you were the first person to make that comparison, Seth. Comparison to the Capitol is just insulting and sounds to me like you are saying our houseless neighbors are not human enough to be considered for public comment. The blood of the folks who died this winter are on your hands, Seth. lives over property, lives over perception, lives over putting money in your own pockets. Thank you.
Thank you, Tristan. Next speaker, please.
Bodie Hallett.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right. So urgent help is needed. The situation at Camp 210 has never been more dire. The need for support from community has never been more immediate. The level of danger for the houseless individuals at camp has never been higher. Now is the time to redouble our efforts to provide food, clothing, warmth, and safety, and to pressure our elected officials to provide emergency shelter in the short term and no barrier, no cost housing for the long term. Mayor Fleetwood compared the events on Friday, which made national and international news like Breitbart and Fox News, to the storming of the Capitol on January 6th. This is dangerous. There's a universe of difference between people entering City Hall to sit and white supremacists breaking into the country's capital with the intent to capture and potentially execute elected officials in an effort to overthrow an election. The ramifications of this abhorrent false equivalence has been an increase in threats of violence towards our houseless neighbors at camp, house individuals driving through camp in loud trunks, honking their horns in the middle of the night to prevent campers from sleeping, brandishing weapons towards campers, and many people posting vile, reprehensible messages of hatred towards the residents of camp on social media. The fact that some people care more about graffiti on City Hall than they do about living human beings is beyond me. Additionally, the city has stopped porta potty and garbage services at camp, the result of which will become an immediate public health crisis. Without basic sanitation services, the risk of illness and diseases multiplies exponentially. These actions seem to point to the city preparing to sweep the camp in full, using the actions on Friday as justification for doing so. This is morally bankrupt and void of basic care for our fellow human beings. Individuals who live in houses in a neighborhood aren't a monolith, and neither are our houseless neighbors in Camp 210. They are Marie, Autumn, Buster, Melissa, Jack, Lonnie, Sasha, Jacob, Eric, individuals with hopes and dreams, love and empathy, skills and integrity. Strip away the walls on all of our houses, and we would see an equal number of hard workers, couples in love, individuals battling addiction, demons being faced, and folks striving for the good. Sweeping the camp will do nothing but disperse our houseless neighbors. At the height of winter, and in the midst of the greatest public health crisis in a century, it will undoubtedly lead to death. We all need one another. There are countless times in all of our lives where we only survive through the kindness of strangers. Right here, right now, we have an opportunity to act, to let love guide us, let community unite us, and not let hate divide us. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Bodie. Next speaker, please.
HK.
Hi, Council. Heather Katahdin, American-born voting citizen in Whatcom County. Hello, Mary, Seth, and City Council. I'm grateful our winter so far has not been severe as past winters. And I'm grateful for the neighbors who are respectful to each other and who share their time and resources with both their friends and strangers. I'm hearing today from the city reports that the time has ended for those living their lives on our Lottie lawns. What I'm not hearing is the location of where these neighbors can move to. That is, whether a medium barrier emergency tiny village or public-private location. I recall there's no longer any camping outside the missions building, and that in past years there were many who camped outside when they were turned away at the missions doors. When I talk to my homeless neighbors, I let them know I'm concerned for their well-being and that wherever they move to, as we both know, they are moved along constantly by city law enforcement. Wherever they move to, we will find them, we will see them, and we will not give up as a community until each person has safe shelter. It's incorrect for anyone in our state health department to imply that the majority of citizens who are unsheltered or sleeping on our Lottie Street lawns are dangerous. It is incorrect for the state to imply that any person who is homeless living outside is choosing that living situation. Friday night, when I was walking in town, I met an elder citizen who was living on Lottie Lawn. He thanked me for stopping to visit him. He shared his desire was that no matter what his past mistakes he made in the past, his desire was to be remembered as a person who lived his life in gratitude. He was very grateful for the basic pallet hut that was screwed together by the aid of another camping resident and covered with a plastic tarp, a simple emergency shelter that would withstand windstorms or snowstorms that previously had flattened his tents. Many of our citizens who are on shelter do not have cell phones nor internet. Of the ones I speak with, I would estimate that 10% have access to cell phones or computers. For the record, they do not have access to listening to our public meetings nor to giving public comment. The public library that used to have computer access is closed. I appreciate the previous speakers who state their personal witness of their care of our neighbors who are experiencing being temporarily homeless. It's very hard to remain calm when your life is being threatened. But calm and courageous, many of us will remain. I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Next speaker, please.
Abby?
Hi, can you hear me?
We can, Abby. Go ahead.
Thanks. My name is Abby. I have lived in Bellingham for the last 6 years. I'm not a university student. I'm a working professional, and I would like to express my deep gratitude to the Coast Salish people, and specifically the Lummi people, who have been stewards of this land since time immemorial and are leading efforts to care for their land and their people. I would like to echo the statements made by my fellow comrades and neighbors regarding the alleged concerns around Camp 210. And I would like to respond directly to Seth and the claims that you've made about the threats to public safety that you've observed at Camp 210. How dare you say that public safety is threatened not by the dire conditions of houselessness in the midst of a pandemic in the winter, but by staff who are allegedly threatened while working inside of a locked building? How dare you distance yourself from the connection that you explicitly drew between a white supremacist action of storming the U.S. Capitol and a rebellion of our community's most vulnerable who have been continuously neglected and dehumanized, deprived of basic human rights of housing and healthcare? I find it appalling that the city's actions to protect public health include closing public buildings and a failure to open any accessible sheltering option. The city is intentionally depriving our neighbors of basic access to sanitary services like restrooms and garbage pickup. Our public services are willingly placing our neighbors' lives at risk by refusing to allow ambulances to come anywhere near Camp 210. Our neighbors' lives are at risk, and I understand that many were unsettled by what took place on Friday, and I want to say that this should not come as a surprise. This has been going on for months, and Friday was Treaty Day, and I would like to make a request to all of our city council members, and specifically to Seth. Please read the Treaty of Point Elliott. I suspect that you have not, and I would like you to honor the treaties. I would also like to address the claims that have been made regarding the despicable violence and the heinous crimes that were committed, and just say that property damage is not violence. Paint is not violence. Property can be replaced. Lives cannot, and lives are being lost. Absolutely nothing that happened this weekend makes any resident of Camp 210 any less deserving of housing or support. Every single one of our community members deserves support, and there's not going to be a single solution or model. We need solidarity, not charity. We need housing now. Stop the sweeps.
Thank you, AB. Next speaker, please.
Eves Mason Marcus.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Eve. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Eves Mason Marcus. I'm a teacher, sister, renter, and I speak from the unceded lands of the Coast Salish people. First off, the comparison made by the mayor concerning last Friday is dangerous, false, and has encouraged violence against our unhoused friends. There is a vast difference between people entering City Hall to honor the age-old tradition of a sit-in and the white supremacists breaking into the Capitol armed with weapons and the intent to capture and potentially execute elected officials in order to overthrow an election. Second, I am ashamed of our community for caring more about reputation and perception than community health. Only 1 week ago, we celebrated the Reverend Dr. King and his never-ending pursuit of justice. How are we continuing to follow his path? How are we showing up for justice in our community? We cannot only act in his image one day a year. We need to celebrate and put into action Dr. King's words every single day. In his words, quote, "We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Each of us is responsible for one another, and yet here we are, Bellingham, seemingly comfortable with sacrificing people's lives for the comfort of the privileged. After an entire summer of Bellingham police sweeping camps and none of you lifting a finger to prevent those sweeps, despite CDC recommendations, despite the 9th District Court ruling, despite Marcus advocating for a stop to sweeps every single meeting of every week, we found ourselves inching towards winter with no emergency winter shelter. After a summer of throwing away people's belongings and exposing our most vulnerable to the threat of COVID and the elements, we find ourselves here with more than 100 campers surviving in community on the City Hall lawn. In community, Camp210 has survived windstorms, snowfall, torrential rain, abuse at the hands of housed community members, false hope offered without remorse from our government, and daily needs that are met as much as they can be. It seems the city and county never had the intention to provide emergency winter shelter. It seems the city and county were hoping to do nothing this winter for those in need. It seems the city is only committed to the community that owns property as if that is a quantifier to what you deserve as a human being. The sweep is confrontation. The sweep is aggression. The sweep is violence. How can a sweep be the correct response to trauma, to mental health, to poverty, to racism, sexism, transphobia? At camp, we respond to trauma with informed care and love. We respond to mental health with space and empowerment. We respond to poverty with mutual aid, and we hold each other accountable for harmful behavior. Who is holding you accountable for your harmful behavior? A group of working class humans with jobs, schools, families are navigating our COVID life and engaging with our unhoused neighbors and building a community together. And what are you doing? Leaving behind our veterans, our youth, our vulnerable, our most impacted community, sweeping them into a different corner, perhaps one that is less seen. We need emergency winter shelter now for everyone at City Hall. We need permanent affordable housing now. We need to house our unhoused neighbors. We need to show up with love. We have the resources. We have the people. We have the energy. Let's do this the right way. Let us be accountable to ourselves and each other and house our human family. Thank you.
Go to the next speaker, please.
Maria Elarquai.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm calling just to express my support for the Camp210 and its volunteers. I do not support the extremely harmful lawn sweep, and as a housed resident in Bellingham, I urge the city to offer no barrier shelter for everyone on the lawn and for there to just be no lawn sweep. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Maria. Next speaker, please.
Nicole Smith.
Hi, my name is Nicole Smith, and I'm calling to vehemently oppose the stance that the city has taken on the encampment at City Hall. Mayor, your actions have been deplorable. Your comparison of what happened on Friday to the white supremacist hissy fit in Washington, D.C. would be laughable if it weren't so violent. A group of people opening the doors to the lobby of a building, sitting inside, and then leaving when the police arrived is hardly the blockbuster plot line that you'd like to imagine for yourself. If this action was so terrifying and violent, why were no arrests made? Why did the police simply leave after the group walked back outside? What's truly disgusting about this is not just the comparison of people standing up for human decency with entitled white supremacists. It's the fact that your comparison has actually encouraged entitled white supremacists to increase their presence and intimidation at camp. People with the absolute least regard for humanity and the most contempt for people living without shelter have been emboldened to constantly harass the camp in a multitude of ways. And you know what's worse? Afterwards, all of these people go back to their heated homes, sleep in beds, and get up the next morning to be encouraged by your rhetoric of some imagined monster that's living at Camp210. These are people, and your demonization is inhumane. Instead of using your position to lead with integrity, you are shrinking into cowardice and doubling down on your lack of care. You say that the actions of protesters that day put the homeless more at risk. I'm overcome with the audacity you would have to make that statement when you have watched with absolute apathy as 100 people on your lawn have suffered through freezing temperatures, constant rain, and repeated windstorms that warranted extreme weather advisories. And after all of that, you threaten to sweep the entire lawn without anywhere for its residents to go. You say that you seek a peaceful end to the encampment, but there is absolutely nothing peaceful about destroying people's homes and a hub for community support. You say the city will not be aggressors, but what exactly is unaggressive about armed police officers removing people through physical force, threat of incarceration, or both? Every day that you neglect to use your power to house these individuals and continue to vilify them and their allies, you are putting their lives at risk. To a few of the previous commenters, you all are embarrassed about the optics of your image while people are literally freezing to death outside. Get your priorities together. Your lack of awareness of the reality of the situation is quite frankly the most embarrassing thing about Bellingham. And to the rest of City Council, where are you? Council President Hannah Stone came to the encampment on Friday and said she was unaware of the notice of the sweep. She said there's little communication between the mayor and the council on what has been happening with Camp 210. Why are you not demanding this communication? Why are you not standing up for the people down there? Are these people not your constituents as well? You're all smart, you're all educated. You understand power dynamics, bias, and the historical vilification of the poor by both those in power and the media who serve them. I don't believe that you're naive. I believe that you're complicit. I yield my time.
Thank you, Nicole. Next speaker, please.
Lauren Boucher.
Hi, good evening. My name is Lauren Boucher. I'm 28. I was born here in Bellingham. I went to Western. I'm living on Coast Salish territory. I work for a local nonprofit that serves this community's mental health needs, and I'm also an elected leader from the 42nd Legislative Democrats. But tonight, my statements and views are entirely my own. I urge this council to align with this city's residents who are experiencing houselessness and commit to not sweeping the 210 Lottie camp. There are families, veterans, and individuals and more who have benefited tremendously from central access to emergency no-barrier sheltering that is offered at 210. The effort from folks in this community to support the camp is such a beautiful work of many hands and hearts. I've seen it firsthand. The meal train organizing, the streams of donated food, clothes, and volunteer time and compassion proves that this camp deserves more time to stay sheltered in place until both emergency sheltering and no barrier permanent housing is guaranteed and available. Similarly to like what Councilmember Vargas brought up regarding the triage center project, an excellent work that was put forward by a dynamic group from this body of legislators, I call for a similar commitment to staffing and housing and mental health programs that are being called for by mutual aid efforts. There are clear asks from the people that you are being spoken to tonight and for months now that know exactly what these campers are asking for, and they've worked hard to make sure you understand clearly. I want you all that are listening on the phone tonight, that have tuned into this meeting, as well as on the council, to join the hearts and minds on the right side of history and dig deeper into the solutions you're being asked to participate in. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you, Lauren. Next speaker, please.
Michael Stuthoff.
We can come back. Next speaker, please, Ms. Oaks. Oh.
Well, hello. I must remind you that.
I hear you.
Hello. I must remind you that the national news is watching. I must repeat, the national news is watching. The narrative is being controlled by a bunch of citizens who are not involved on the street level, citizens who are not homeless themselves, and no one has acknowledged that this is human rights of homeless individuals exerting their First Amendment right. That will be the narrative that comes through on a national level. The First Amendment thing, which we all stand for as Americans, is being tramped on, and a pretend narrative by a mayor who controls all, which is continuing on in this town. he is not the new mayor that we voted in. I wish we had the last lady who would not have helped at all. But anyways, I'm degrading in the sense that we have our own demands, and you must listen to citizens who are homeless. We have a lot to provide on the volunteer level. They're helping tremendously. We are seeing citizens who are isolated, creating scenes out in public, who come here, who are getting the community that they deserve, the community that we stand for, and the values that we represent, which is not what you are doing by pretending that this is something you control, that you can sweep away, because we will come back the next day after you imprison us, and we will camp the next day. We will keep camping, and there will be hundreds more that are going to be unhoused and coming in our society. And this is bull that you can't grasp the level that is before you, because you're controlling the narrative to our herald. And this is, I just can't handle, Seth, what you've done to the defund campaign. You have provided 3 provided officers who have mental health training, which all officers need. They shouldn't be involved at all. You have spent thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars on 20-bed facility that's controlled by the jail. You're trying to pack the jails just like you did before in the future and say our jails are inadequate for the community. And you pack these people. The abuse that the police put on these people will be addressed. This is bull. These people have taken enough. They have PSD and have to take medications because of what you have done to them. And nothing has changed. You have taken no money away from the police to help provide the basic services, and it's going to bite you in the ass. This is bull. I'm over it. Arrest me. Come again.
Next caller, please.
Well, William Shanker.
My name is William Shankin. I live on unceded Coast Salish land. One of the campers who I've developed a deep relationship with, who wants to get a home and a car so he can get back to work, was telling me this morning how he was upset by the burning of the American flag on Friday. And then he told me, I would rather freeze to death than go back to base camp. Everyone around the burn barrel agreed that base camp was not an option. The events on Friday were challenging, as are most days at Camp 210, yet once again, the people volunteering and living at Camp 210 are proving to be the adults in this town. They all met Saturday night and talked through what happened and discussed people's differences and agreed to continue to work together, despite the fact that many of them were upset with the direction the protest took on Friday. Why? Because they understand that the violence that the government is perpetuating against people in our community is orders of magnitude worse than any graffiti or any door damage. The volunteers continue to seek both immediate solutions through mutual aid and political solutions through pressuring the government. This, while the politicians in this town appear to have led a protest that wasn't how the housed people like it to happen, steal the spotlight from the actual problem, which is that there are people being denied their human rights to shelter. In this time that has passed since Friday, I've heard a lot of chatter about the collective losing its credibility. Thoughts and prayers to you who are concerned for the collective or wish it would operate differently. The collective is not worried about their credibility. They are focused on navigating the multiple barriers being placed in their way as they work to keep intact the humanity of the people experiencing homelessness in our community. From my perspective, it is the politicians and the government who should be concerned about their credibility. 100 meetings, thousands of hours of conversation, and yet our sisters and brothers continue to suffer without adequate housing. And the government remains the barrier to preventing housing. Homes Now has shown that our community would build homes if you would give us land. Camp 2 has shown us that campers would build their own homes if you would give us land. If you can't give them land by waiving your precious zoning rules, then use your powers of the purse and do it to your standards. Stop blaming the young people saving lives on the lawn for your failures. I am here to plead with you to understand what your conscience will bear if you continue down this path. You, as agents of government, are engaged in unconscionable acts of violence by preventing the community sheltering these as human beings on our terms. It is not the federal government zoning law that is keeping us from housing people. It is yours, the ones you control. You need to either come up with a solution or get out of the way, because right now you are complicit. Sethi has said in meetings that the social contract is broken, but continues to wield the power of the state to terrorize the people experiencing homeless. That is a crime against humanity. I didn't burn the American flag or open a closed door, but I would much rather bear that and answer in my conscience for those actions, be complicit in the dereliction of duty you are all engaged in. As Amanda Gorman said, a mere 22 years old herself last Wednesday, for the new dawn blooms as we.
Time.
Thank you, William. Next speaker, please.
Stacy Kendra.
Hello. You can hear me, right? Cool. I'm Stacy. I'm a volunteer. I'm usually there between 4 and 8 a.m. So early morning hours during the times that the patriots are, the freedom-minded people are harassing us, as in driving over the curb and speeding down the road just to prove that they can, in a state where the police have just run over someone just for standing in front of their vehicle. I feel threatened by that, not by the campers or being in camp. I feel personally threatened by Joe, the community helper, 360-201-5797. Maybe you could look into that. And then I could take you seriously when you talk about public safety. Because let me tell you something. I'm from Alabama. And I didn't consider anything in the UK Daily Mail or the Sun Times when planning my trip here, okay? I considered the education level, the safety level, the public health level. I'm from Alabama. We rank #1 in the country here. I'm from the state that ranks #50. So, with this bullshit about public safety, come on.
No. Next speaker, please, Elizabeth.
John Smith.
What is she going to respond to? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, I'd just like to start off today by saying, Mayor Fleetwood, I will never vote for you again. Your comments comparing the community at Camp 210 to white supremacists have endangered those you claim to represent. Since your comments, camp has been the target of increasing white supremacist attacks. The cops you called to talk to your constituents instead of yourself have done nothing to stop these exact attacks. Your lack of action has already caused damage and could continue to cause deaths. Your lack of action has shown that you do not care. Your comments to the media have shown you'd rather score a cheap political win than accurately represent the events which transpired. You claim to not be the aggressor while simultaneously removing people from their homes. You claim to not be the aggressor while simultaneously threatening community members with threats of violence. You have shown your true colors. You are the sensationalizer. You are the one denying people care. You are the one reinforcing and radicalizing white supremacists. Think about what you're doing. Admit you have not done enough. Quit endangering those who are already the most disenfranchised and own up to the mistakes you've made. Seth, I want a public apology for your comments, and I'd like the city council to condemn what you've said. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, John. Next speaker, please.
John Smith.
Cindy Strom. Cindy Strom?
Next speaker, please, Elizabeth.
Sarah Glebe?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
It's Sarah Glebe, actually. So I'm a little tired, but I'll try to get through all that I had in my head. First off, I think a lot of your priorities are whacked out, considering people are spending a lot of time talking about graffiti, a burning flag, a dirty lawn, or like it not being walkable, when people are literally being forced to live there. Like 100 people are being forced to live on that lawn in the middle of winter in tents. Like, you're complaining about having to do a meeting from home, or, oh no, it's too scary to go to work. Like, these people are living there. Like, I don't know if you understand that or if you get it. Like, there's people living outside. So maybe, like, I don't know, get that into your head real quick. Two, I was walking home the other day from camp. I spent a lot of time at camp, or just like talking to my friends who are houseless. And someone told me they used 3 sleeping bags to stay cold the other night. 3 sleeping bags to like, and still be cold. Oh, did you cut me off for swearing? Okay, no, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, but Sarah, please be respectful or we will have to mute you. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's more disrespectful to cut off constituents than it is to swear, but that's just a difference in personal opinion. But anyways, so 3 sleeping bags to stay warm out at night. And instead of like giving people housing, you're talking about sweeping people out of the little shelter that they have, the little community that they've assembled. That's murder on your hand. That's blood on all your guys' hands if you don't step up to stop it. That's really all I got to say. Get your priorities in order. Start serving your constituents. You guys are doing something that's actually just evil. Like, I don't see how you can look at these actions and not see that it is evil to cut services to 100 people who don't have housing and to literally evict them from the little shelter they have. Like, I mean, it's evil. Yeah, peace.
Thank you, Sarah. And prior to the next speaker, just a reminder, I know the guidelines were listed on the public comment period. But a reminder that the meetings are publicly broadcast as well, and members of the community of all ages are watching. And so to mind your language. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Alicia Fergozzo?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. My name is Alicia Fergozzo, and I've been a constituent of Bellingham, which resides on unceded Coast Salish territory for about 7.5 years. I am a Western Washington graduate and a local educator. I've been following the events of Camp210 from day one and supporting campers in various ways that they are directly requesting. And I'd like to start off by looking beyond Camp210 for a moment and beyond this winter by stating that there is no reason that the city hasn't provided services to our houseless community members this winter. This is not an issue new to this season or year and cannot be seen as a surprise. The loss of life due to severe weather during winter in Bellingham has unfortunately been experienced in past years and potentially this year maybe, and there is no excuse for the lack of support currently. Every community member deserves housing. It is disgraceful to continue to respond to these calls for action by saying go to base camp as if that is a clear and obvious solution for all. Base camp is, first of all, not large enough to support all of our houseless community members or those at Camp210, and you continue to disregard the legitimate and negative experiences of many who have been at base camp. This is an unacceptable response, and I would request that you stop responding with that statement. Mayor Fleetwood, earlier in this meeting, you stated that asking many campers to move 25 feet is a simple request. I believe that is a very ignorant statement. I would implore you to check your privilege. This is still a sweep, asking campers to move their belongings, whether 25 feet or 100 feet or 1,000 feet. It's still a sweep, and the only way to end camp peacefully, like you say you are committed to doing, is to work with the community to use creative solutions to support every single person, not just those that you deem deserving of supports. You can begin by working with Eric Johnston to resume services, sanitary services to the porta potties and dumpsters on Lottie Street, because that is how we create safe spaces for members of the public, as Eric Johnston has stated specifically is his priority. When your actions don't match your words, you lose credibility. As public commenter Anya Rick previously stated, we adapt now or we let people die. I yield my time.
Thank you, Alicia. Next speaker, please.
Melissa Weisner.
Yep, it's me. Shout out to everybody listening. The overflow shelter, the lights were turned on, which means they're getting ready to sweep you guys soon because they're preparing the overflow. So I just want to make sure that everybody at 210 has a heads up on that. Yeah, so this was a nice setup, Seth. You know, sitting here finally being able to step back and listen after having to cut and run and like burn my ties because I knew that the second that they defended themselves against you, that you would turn it around on them and that you would turn them into aggressors. And so instead of the narrative being mayor leaves most vulnerable outside for 3 months in a pandemic and the winter, now all of a sudden you're a victim. That's really cute, dude. And now you get to sweep them instead of providing shelter that they've been begging and begging and begging for 3 months. And it's such a sweet setup. And now you've got all those bright wing mags on your tail. And now you can cite their own safety because now the Trumpers are going to try to kill my campers. You know, you didn't really care about safety of the camper I had to chase down for 2 weeks to keep her alive, did you? Now I can't even get in there to see them because of the rift that you created. And now they're going to get swept and they're going to die because I'm not going to be able to find them out there. You know what? I can't talk. I yield my time. Shut me off.
Thank you, Melissa. Next speaker, please.
Toph B.
Hi, yes, I'm Toph. First of all, I'd like to thank y'all for the time that you're giving me. Second of all, I would like to address the city council members. How dare you? How dare you sit high and mighty and call for safety concerns as city employees and look out at the window to people who are sitting on the ground, who are camping out there and have no choice but to camp out there. How dare you think that you are above all of that when they are dying out there, freezing? You talk and have these countless meetings as if these people are just theory living in your mind. Seth, you comparing them to white supremacists that are going into the Capitol when these are just houseless people that are criminalized enough by the community, by others that see them as lesser. How dare you? As a volunteer and a member of the Bellingham community, I hope and pray that you can look within yourself and to actually see your community, as you see them as equals. Because honest to God, as council members, you're already hopeless to me. So maybe quit your jobs and maybe talk to people who are outside, houseless members outside. Step out maybe at midnight, 3 a.m., see, like how cold it is. Imagine being there. Anyways, I'd like to end my statement with a quote from a community member of LA who said this to the piggy Michael Moore, the police chief of LA. Seth Fleetwood, you are a disgrace.
Next speaker, please.
Marquand Smith.
It's me. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, nice to know. There is one thing and a couple of things I've noticed for my whole time being here since November. We've all been on the implication of the misinterception and the misperception of what we needed to do. We don't need to circle on what replications and regulations we need to provide these people housing, but more the fact we need to demonstrate the production of value towards getting the land to get these people housing. We're not trying to get the weather implications of a 28 degrees to provide emergency shelter. We're already there due to the windstorms, the rain, the water, the drought, the grass that's soaking it in. We don't want to be violent entities. We want to be people who positively gain a futuristic outlook from this help, this assistance. And I don't understand where the city and county council just get to sit home with their wine in their warm house while we're shivering out here trying to get these people warm coffee at night. And that's barely a struggle as is. I am myself a homeless representative. I lived on these streets, and it's still rough and sympathetic to see these people out here shivering 3 years ago, and they're still fighting for it the first time. So I've been trying to hear where we need to have this implication of what we need to do to provide the outcome of a housing within the next 2 weeks. Because if that does not happen, we're going to go into the weather implications of winter. And that's frost on the ground, frostbite, hypothermia, and a lot of stopping hearts. What do we need? And I'll be liking to hear about it next week. I fall to my time. Good day.
Thank you, Marquand. Next speaker, please.
Cy Horsley.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. So I'm not here to talk to Seth. I'm here to talk to my lovely audience because I've realized volunteering at Camp210 since December that Seth really has no power at all. So I would like everybody talking today to see that mutual aid works, that we don't need the city to give us what these people down at camp need. We can give it to them. We can give it to each other. They can give it to themselves. They just need you to reach your hand out. All this passion I hear in your voices, you need to come down and bring it at camp. We need the people. We need the love. We need the bodies. I mean, the city council, they don't have any power. We have the power. I just want people to look at themselves and see if they are respecting property over people. Thank you. I yield my time.
Thank you, Cy. Next speaker, please.
Nicole Hernandez.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, let me open my page. All right. You all are an embarrassment and quite frankly, a waste of my money. Shame on all of you for using my taxpayer dollars to fund your discriminations and your racism. Before Friday, when taking donations to camp, I witnessed a community of peaceful and loving humans helping each other because the city of Bellingham refuses to step up. On Friday, while holding a sign for equity on the corner of Camp210 in support of emergency shelter, I witnessed county court workers in their third-floor office windows using their taxpayer-funded salaries to stand there gawking at us, thumbs downing us, shaking their heads at us. I also witnessed media harassing the people who were denying consent to their photos being taken. I saw people in their cars flipping me off, revving their engines at us. You know what, Seth? You've made your intentions very clear. You and all of your privileged buddies have accomplished your goals of inspiring the white supremacists in Bellingham and Whatcom to come forward and threaten those of us who support basic services. It is disgusting that our government employees would prefer to conduct a violent sweep rather than help the houseless community try to survive winter. Last Friday, you whined about city employees having to take a shuttle from the senior center to work. It's obvious your silver spoon-filled mouth has never had to worry about sleeping on the snowy streets in winter. And you know what? There's a slight chance that fate might serve you what you deserve, but it is certain that the time is coming when we will vote you all out. You know what? I demand you to not sweep. I demand that you either help us support our houseless community in a humane way or get the heck out of the way. And by the way, get your damn cops to wear masks in our neighborhoods. Thank you. I'm done.
Next speaker, please.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can, Paige.
Perfect. I just want to say I have zero faith in the city or Sethi to fix any of the homeless problem right now, because if you guys really wanted to, you would have done it years ago. You guys wouldn't have prioritized property over people's lives. You guys wouldn't be jeopardizing their chances of housing by sweeping them off the streets without finding another place for them to go. It's really disappointing to see so many taxpayer dollars go into a broken government. And I think it's really funny that Seth actually compared what happened on Friday to the events at the Capitol, because like ever since you've done that, we've had MAGA weirdos and chuds harassing the campers and the volunteers. We've had them threaten to detox some volunteers and campers. And it's really inappropriate that you would even put us in danger like that. Like, I don't understand what you're trying to do for the community. You want to spew some little story, but then you're going to put half of your community in danger, and then your cops aren't going to wear masks, and then they're going to harass everyone, and they're going to stop people from donating at the camp. Like, I don't understand what the hell your game plan is. You guys are wasting everyone's time. You're wasting everyone's money. You guys got extra money for COVID. Like, what the hell is going on, guys? Sorry, like, I understand my language, but at the same time, you guys are sweeping people and removing them from their literal houses that they have right now. They don't have anywhere to go other than tents. Like, you guys are going to remove them, and you're complaining about graffiti and language. You guys need to get your priorities straight, and you guys need to stop for dollars.
Thank you. And I want to acknowledge that there were a couple of speakers who were unable to be unmuted and did not speak this evening, and encourage people to follow up with us in another manner, either by email or phone, and to apologize for those technical difficulties. And at this time, I wanted to give an opportunity for council members and or the mayor, if there were response or questions. Mayor Fleetwood, did you want to go first?
Sure. Goodness, deep breaths. That was a record. I thought I would take a moment to respond to so many of the, I won't even dare to offer any adjectives to characterize what happened tonight. It would simply be seized upon as a opportunity to respond further with more outrage. As it relates to the claims about my involvement in making comparisons to white supremacists in Washington, D.C. and the insurrection, the claims that I gave interviews, quote unquote, to Fox News and all the various media sources that were mentioned, I just want to say, in point of fact, I gave one interview, and it was while we were in the Homeless Strategies work group meeting on Friday, and it was from Cairo. And I recall thinking, oh, I don't want to do a radio interview, but per custom, I did. You know, when we get media requests, usually respond to them. Seattle, Cairo was up here, and I agreed to meet the reporter downtown. We didn't meet, obviously, by the city hall for obvious reasons on that day. And I proceeded to answer questions. Somehow, as I drove down there to the interview, I thought to myself, I'll give an overview of things as it relates to what's been happening down there. But as is so often the case with media, news media, they've got a particular angle they're clearly wanting to present. And in the course of the interview, there were at one point a number of questions that were very clearly leading me and wanting to lead to comparisons to Washington, D.C. I remember being very uneasy about it while the camera is in my face and turned on. and thinking, oh, goodness, I don't want to go there. I could immediately see the opportunity to sensationalize something. And frankly, I was not wanting to make the comparison because I didn't think there was a comparison. And the reporter pressed me with leading questions. And at one point, I sort of relented and I said, well, you know, kind of like, yeah, I suppose you could make a comparison as it relates to, it was that kind of response. That was it. I never wanted to go there. I never brought up the reference to insurrection in Washington, D.C., nothing. So as I say, this is just a lesson in modern media and what can happen and what happens when something goes viral. That was all I did. And it was written up. And of course, the lead thing of all the things I said was characterizing that reference that I was led to, where I simply finally relented and acknowledged, like, well, yeah, you could make that, I suppose. It was that kind of thing. And so I was, frankly, embarrassed when I saw that. And then, of course, it just went out there. But that's the extent of what I did as it relates to that. So for the people who are seizing on that and wanting to draw all kinds of conclusions, I think they go overboard. But to the degree they read that, I just want people to know that, in point of fact, it wasn't quite what you're characterizing, not even close. And the reason in my remarks for saying that it was sensationalized was because it obviously was. I never for a moment would compare anything of what happened at City Hall. There was a protest, there was a reaction, it was what it was. We did leave, but that was it. I'm not suggesting it was this grand traumatic experience, because it wasn't. It was unsettling, but that's it. So I just wanted to clear the air with that, because I think it's important to say that.
Thank you, Mayor Fleetwood. Councilmember Knudsen, and then Anderson.
You know, over the years I've been through a lot. We've had a lot of things go on here, but I've never been through such a despicable public comment period in my life. The language is absolutely outrageous, and we can't tolerate that, period. If this is the way the public comment period is going to be, then we need to get rid of it. We didn't have public comment in City Hall until 1992, and it was listed, as always, for 15 minutes. And here it is now, 9:30. And we had to listen to our mayor be called derogatory names, which breaks every rule in our book. No derogatory comments. I don't know who's in charge of cutting people off. But last year, I know people got upset with me because I cut people off. There should have been a whole lot of people cut off tonight, period. And that needs to happen. And I'm not blaming anybody, but we really need to reassess our public comment period, because if this is the way it's going to be now every Monday night, then we need to even consider not having it for a week or two till everybody calms down, because this just isn't right. The language we heard tonight on television, are you kidding me? That is just outrageous. They should have been cut off immediately, and we need to take a second look at this. And as I look through the roster, where did they come up with the idea that when you start public comment after 7 p.m., the names just keep rolling on and rolling on and rolling on? When are we ever going to get to our business? We need to get our business done first, then listen to that. Or then we can mute them. We won't have to listen to it. But this was a disgrace for the city. What happened last Friday, for anybody to come on our meeting and defend what happened to our city hall and our mayor last Friday, it's disgusting. And it needs to stop.
Councilmember Anderson, and then Lilliquist.
Thank you for a moment to speak. Similar concerns as Jean, but a slightly different take on things. I do value the public comment, and I know passions can arise and people sometimes might have a slip, but there just seemed to be a little too much of it tonight with the profanity. And for the speakers, I would like you to think about something. We are all ages, and it is time where there are young people who would still be up and watching. I personally know a middle school teacher of younger kids who assigned their students to watch tonight for civics. So I'm brokenhearted that there were parents who this may have been their first time for watching city council with their children, and having to hear that level of profanity directed not only to the city council, but the mayor. And I do hope that if this breaks out like this again, that we just stop public comment and resume it when, you know, perhaps the profanity won't be flying as far. It's one thing to say an F-bomb by accident, but repeated use and also describing basically the desire for sex acts, just to frame it where people would know those comments, highly inappropriate. And I hope that doesn't happen again. It does not help convey the message. And actually, I think for a lot of the younger people who may have been watching, it really gives a bad impression of what should be happening between the community talking with their mayor and city council, and our ability to listen with intent and open mind and heart to what the message is. I think it defeats the purpose, and it's not that appropriate. So I really hope next time when we're having public comment and there may be that urge to use this type of profanity, that you check yourself on it, because it's just not us that you're speaking to. You're speaking to a greater part of the community, including children. And maybe you're not parents and you don't realize, you know, some parents do try to not have that exposed to children. And there were children watching tonight, so you should be aware of that. And I'm a little bit brokenhearted that I encouraged this as an assignment a couple of weeks ago to a teacher, and they thought it was a good idea. And I give my apology to the parents and the students and my friend who assigned this as a homework assignment.
Councilmember Lillquist.
Well, let me first say, I think that dialogue is broken down, and I blame a lot of that on COVID. I mean, I would be at the encampment if it weren't for COVID. I would talk to most of these people who are critical of us in person, if not for COVID. What also breaks down is that many people come, speak their piece, and leave. And when they come and they speak their piece, they tell us all the things they think we say and do and want to do and how we approach things, and they don't stay and hear what we might actually think or say. I'd actually agree with a lot of what we heard. I found a lot of it valuable. I didn't like the profanity. It's unnecessary. But I think it's useful. So, I mean, first of all, protesters have the right to make their elected officials feel uncomfortable. I don't just mean here in public comment, I mean the entire protest. Okay, someone says you don't want to be made uncomfortable. No, I totally accept that it comes with the territory. Okay, I'm not objecting to your free speech rights. I'm supporting your free speech rights. But free speech rights doesn't allow any and everything to go forward. There are some things that free speech doesn't forgive. And that's when it comes to harming other people. And that's what concerns me. Not the damage to the trees, not the graffiti, but the possible harm that comes to other people. And that's what I'm concerned about at base camp. Is that a safe place for people to be? And what's happening in front of City Hall, unfortunately, is less and less about housing for people who are homeless and more about a politics of confrontation. And that politics of confrontation, I think, is getting in the way of the solution. Because every single city and county official I've talked with actually agrees with the central request of the protesters, that People deserve housing, and that it's a public obligation. Actually, it's the health department's obligation, and we help them, and to provide winter shelter as a matter of public health. I've totally supported all those efforts. The city has apparently offered a piece of land and money and services to go with it when we're being told that we're standing in the way of a shelter. Why don't you just give us some land? I thought we'd offered that. If we hadn't offered that, again, we have a breakdown. Where's the dialogue? Who's out there talking to whom that spins a story the city council doesn't care or doesn't know? If they think that, they haven't been paying attention for the last 4 or 5 years, where we've talked about shelter and pushed for shelter options and made money available for shelter and for affordable housing projects over and over again. Hundreds of affordable housing units, thousands of people on rental assistance, services and outreach we've paid for because we're paying attention to homelessness. And no, I'm not going to claim success. No one's going to claim success. I'm with Marcus when he says that I'd rather be focusing on solutions, but I'm not with him when he says it's not rocket science. Oh, it's harder than rocket science. We put lots of rockets into space and we have not solved homelessness. It's harder than you think, if you think it's that easy. Housing First model is great. We've actually committed to the Housing First model, all of Whatcom County service agencies for the last 15, 20 years. But finding the money and resources and the personnel to make it happen, that's the hard part. So someone says, we've got the love, we've got the passion, we've got the people. Great. You've got love, money, people, passion. I've got a little bit of that too, and I've got some money and I've got some land. Let's come together. What I'm seeing is a community which is dividing itself when actually I think we mostly agree. The people attacking the city council and the mayor pretty much want something I think the city and council and the mayor wants too. That's a breakdown in a dialogue. And that's not helping. It's not helping us get to a solution. And so I think one of the biggest factual misrepresentations that's leading to this hostility is the idea that the city council doesn't know and doesn't care. We do know, we do care. We're doing things. It's not enough. You say base camp is not enough. Yeah, you're darn right it's not enough. You say that religious-only shelters shouldn't be the only option. Yeah, you're darn right it shouldn't be the only option. Okay? I agree with you if you're one of those critics. And what I see is people coming in who speak very specifically about what they think I believe and what they think I want. You want this, you want that. No, I don't. And if we talked, you'd know that. And if we talked, we'd come to probably a lot of agreement. And so what upsets me the most, no, the second most upsetting thing, is the fact that I'm seeing the breakdown in the dialogue, the breakdown in the breakdown in understanding, breakdown in the awareness that actually we're pretty much kind of on the same page with regard to our goals and our outcomes and our values. And we're really arguing over the means and methods, which, by the way, is where you always end up arguing in the end, over means and methods. And of course, the second thing that hurts me the most is the fact that people are right. There are people out there cold and uncomfortable whose lives are at risk. And I don't think Camp210 is providing love and comfort, companionship, shelter, but it's not the right way either. Tiny home villages, by the way, aren't going to work for everyone either. And the call for no barrier shelters, that's not going to work for people either. There are people who are experiencing homelessness who have experiences with trauma, and that's not the safe place for them. There are people who are homeless who have families they want to stay with and children they want to be with them as well. That's not going to work for them either. Okay, what I've said over and over again is we need a variety of shelter options. And so the call for no barrier shelters is, to me, just as naive as the old call for the high barrier shelter. We need a range of options. I'd rather we have a chance to talk about this than sit here being criticized by people who haven't talked to us and don't know where we're going and don't seem to realize that I want what you want too. I'm not sure what else to say. Go online to the city and the county's website. You can see all the things we've done. We've got lists and lists of the hundreds of units that have been built with public support, the services we pay for. I'm not saying it's not working, but if you look at that track record, at least you can acknowledge that we've been doing something and paying attention. And maybe that's not enough for you, not really enough for me either. But I think then you wouldn't be using profanity, and you wouldn't be as upset as some as you are to think that we're as heartless as you seem to think we are, or as clueless as you seem to think we are. And my guess is a lot of people I'd like to hear what I just say didn't hear it because they're not here, because we don't have a dialogue. And that's a shame. That's my third hurt.
Any other council members? I had one question or point of clarification, and I don't know if this would be directed towards you, Mayor Fleetwood, or to Director Johnston, but the comments regarding the suspension of sanitation services down at Camp 210, I don't know if we can, I know that on the way to the office this evening, I saw the ever-growing pile of trash outside the dumpster, but if that's deliberate action on our part or if that was misinformation.
Eric, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
Sure, Mayor, I'd be happy to do that. So yes, the decision was made in concurrence with our decision to close City Hall and to close the library out of a need to ensure that the safety of all members of the public, including campers and including people at City Hall, could be best protected. And that includes the drivers from SSC. So we did make the request to SSC that we would not continue to support those services for the time being. We also suspended pickup for service for the garbage dumpsters at the library, as well as at City Hall. At the same time, we are continuing to support, as we have done for many years, support for persons experiencing homelessness with dumpsters and porta potties at many locations throughout the city. Those will continue to be serviced by SSC. It is the dumpsters that are in front of City Hall and the porta potties in front of City Hall that will not be serviced until it is deemed safe to do so.
So I appreciate the confirmation, but I will say that it's disturbing because that mountain of trash is growing into a literal mountain. And so I don't know what the time frame is for, for further action. And I realize that may not be something that the city's able to share. But obviously we're talking about public health and safety. That's of growing concern, especially centrally located in downtown. So
we have the same concerns, Councilmember Stone. And as has been consistently said by the mayor and others, there is space available at other locations that the city is supporting that does have adequate and safe sanitation and support services.
Councilmember Stone, are you unaware of the multiple communications regarding the time frame for the end of the encampment?
You mean the end of the month?
Yeah. Are you aware of that?
I am aware of that. Any further questions or comments from council at this time? Councilmember Vargas.
There were a lot of very passionate comments this evening. Was a little disturbing, really. And I want to say that a peaceful demonstration does not include spraying the city hall with graffiti, tearing down the American flag, or forcing entry into City Hall. That is not a peaceful demonstration, and we do not condone that behavior. And I do not think it is okay for everyone to defend that was, because that was absolutely unnecessary. And the language this evening, and you know, Mayor Seth has had calls every single day trying to find housing for everybody who is unhoused and living on our lawn. And to say he's not doing anything or none of us are doing anything is ridiculous. But I also know that no matter what I say tonight, probably isn't going to matter because most people just shout at us and walk away. They're not listening to the work that we are doing or what we're trying to solve or how we're trying to do it. But we do have a public safety issue. And that was before Friday. And Friday just cemented my concern that this has absolutely gone on too long. And we will find places for everybody to go by the end of this month. But I do support our city hall being returned to the safe condition and public access that everyone deserves to have, that they do not have right now at our library and our city hall. So that's enough.
Mayor Fleetwood.
I think it bears worth mentioning that from the beginning of this encampment, which as we know is in violation of our Bellingham Municipal Code, it was characterized by the organizers as a protest. It was not in any way formally permitted by the city. It remained, and we did not enforce it. Because we were engaged in creating conditions, making good faith efforts to create conditions to improve sheltering. There was a request for 50 pallets early on or tiny homes in November. You will recall that local government was responsive to that. The county council authorized the executive to order 50 tiny homes. We were actively engaged in finding sites for new tiny home shelters. You recall that we have listened to, and there's appears to be some dispute, but we have good, credible authorities we listen to and respect and can cite, who maintain that we shouldn't have a tiny home encampment of a certain size. So we continued to do that, which involves encampments of approximately 25 homes. You'll recall we used 25 of the tiny homes for the Swift Haven site at Civic Field. You'll recall that we were actively engaged in the effort of finding an operator who could operate a low barrier site. We worked with our partners. The port offered a site. The county offered to use the additional 25 homes. The city and the county offered to put money in for credentialed professionals to make a Has this whole thing been
No, it just muted a couple seconds ago.
Oh, okay. That was interesting. I wonder if I accidentally did that.
No, it was me. I said I wanted to get rid of public comment. I was trying right now, but it didn't work. No, I'm just kidding.
So Swift Haven, I'd mentioned we'd put that up. We're in the process of trying to find an operator for an additional site that was low barrier. I went through that. I don't know where I got cut off, but efforts were made, good faith efforts, consistent, solid movement in building increased capacity. You recall that the group, many of whom, including Eve, who was on tonight with her expression towards us, was part of the group that, and they get to make this judgment call, but they rejected that offer that would have created place for 25 people. I was on the record previously saying if we can find another operator, I'd be willing to spend some discretionary funds we have for housing to buy 25 pallets. So we have actively engaged. I mentioned the fact that we didn't go in and clear it, which we would have been legally authorized to do on day 2, let it go on weeks and months, 2.5 months. It was never intended that this was going to become a permanent encampment. But we made solid, and we continue to make solid effort at doing the difficult work of building these encampments. There's an RFQ, you know, that was mentioned earlier this morning that's going to put 40 sites up. Yes, the drop-in center opened up and is open this week as a place for warming, as a place where people can go sleep. Is it perfect? No. Do we recognize that there are needs for unique sheltering spaces? We've heard that. We recognize that. We're working on that. We're doing this solid work, and it's not easy, but we're making progress. So the assertions that were so profoundly overstated tonight with language suggesting that we're not doing anything and we don't care is really unfair. So we'll just continue marching forward. The encampment at City Hall is going to come to an end. We're going to continue working in parallel track to do the work we've been doing to build increased sheltering opportunities. And we'll be engaged with council members and our counterparts at the county, executives to do, social service providers, all of our housing partners in coming to agreements about what we should do with the money that we have for this issue. So, to be continued.